أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. You guys can see the PowerPoint slides? Okay. Because the participants tab is minimized on the side so I can see the slides better myself. If you guys have any questions, just speak up, please, okay? Today, inshallah, we're going to be covering lessons number 9 and lesson number 9 and lesson number 10, inshallah, from the second unit of the Arabic book that you guys have. Let's get into it, inshallah. So just like before, as is customary in my classes, we're going to start off with a little bit of a review. Again, remember the purpose of this review is not to answer the questions in the class. It is rather to raise questions and give you examples. I pick examples from the book that I think that you should be able to answer now that they've gone through that previous session. So the review today will be from lesson number 7 and 8. And any portion of today's review that you cannot answer serves as a motivation for you to go back and revisit the notes from lesson number 7 and lesson number 8. So we're not trying to answer these questions. I'm just simply posing them and showing you the verses and asking you what is going on here. And if you're able to answer that, then alhamdulillah, that's very good. And if not, if you're not able to answer that, then that serves as a good indication that you might need to go back and review what was in lesson number 7, what was in lesson number 8. Here are 3 examples that I think that after having covered the last session, you should be able to look at, right? And see what's going on and be able to answer which lesson these examples belong to, A, right? And B, what exactly is the shahid? Shahid meaning the explicit position in this verse, which is linked to that particular lesson. Okay, so here are the 3 examples. For example, number 1, I had mentioned to you that basically um, there are 2 opinions. The opinion of the book that we are going with is the opinion we're going to go forward right now. But if you open our tafasirs, Majmu al-Bayan, for example, as well as Al-Mizan, some of them indicate at different translations, even different explanations for this particular verse 41-30. Okay. So, لا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا. What this la is and how does this la affect the verbs afterward? There are 2 explanations there, as I mentioned before in the session as well, if I'm not mistaken. لا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا. So one translation is so you may not fear nor grieve. And then, according to some mufassirins, the translation should be don't fear and don't grieve, right? So, why is there change in translation? And those who say, so you may not fear and nor so you may nor not fear nor grieve, as opposed to those who say, don't fear and don't grieve. You guys should be able to now understand what the difference between the 2 is in terms of the amil, in terms of what that la is doing, and what la is it exactly that is there. Okay. Um, and what is happening with the fi'l after that? Is it majzum? Is it mansub? What's going on? Right? So you've covered enough to be able to answer that. If you aren't able to answer that, WhatsApp message me. Like some of you have been already doing that. When you guys get stuck on some of the examples, you WhatsApp message me, and within the week, I try to respond when I have time, inshallah. It's important that you be able to distinguish between these 2 possibilities in verse 41 and 30, because that will show me that you understand the previous chapters that we've covered so far, and we're able to implement it and see where the two opinions are stemming from. You should be able to know what this chart up here represents, which unit it belongs to, right? And exactly what does it do? In a very similar manner, you should be able to look at this particular chart and understand it and have it memorized in the sense that if somebody was to tell you what does this chart belong to, what this chart is for, you should be able to answer what it's for and be able to say, okay, for example, what is the dual, the musanna of the second person masculine? You should be able to answer that. Similarly, if I asked you what is the second person feminine for the dual, you should be able to answer that. Okay. So it's good that we practice these and have a good understanding of them and to the level where we've almost memorized it or actually memorized it. At this level, I expect you guys to be able to do that. If you're putting in that time at home as homework, one aspect of that homework is to be able to look at this chart, familiarize yourself with it to the point where you are memorizing it. Some tips for memorization. Each individual is different when it comes to memorization. So figure out what type of a memorizer are you. Some people memorize best by looking at the picture, right? Looking at the English words underneath it and visualizing the positions of the words. So basically in their mind, they'll have a visual copy of this diagram right here. Okay, this is one type of a memorizer. Another type of person will say, no, I'm actually a vocal memorizer. So what they'll do is they'll recite this in a particular tune in which they'll have memorized now that tune, and hence they have memorized the sequence and the order of what to say where when it comes to conjugating this particular verb or any other verb for that matter. That's another type of memorizer. A third type says, no, I need to be able to uh, uh, write or draw or perhaps use my hands. So if you guys can say, like, people sometimes use their hands and they well, two here, three, 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 and so on and so forth, and they memorize through that as well. In the initial stages where you're trying to memorize these different routes, the practice of them and so on and so forth is important. Figuring out which one works best for you helps. If there's another route that I haven't mentioned that works for you, share it with your group mates. If it worked for you, perhaps it'll work for them as well. The bottom line is once you memorize these and you practice these, slowly, slowly, it becomes part and parcel of your person. You're able to pull them up quickly or recognize them when you're reading a text very quickly. Both are important skills for you. So this is a little bit about the review. Questions were posed and conjugations were shown, such that inshallah, that if you haven't reached the level that I've said so far, that's okay. It just means that you have now motivation to go back and try and reassess the chapters that we've covered so far with myself, right? And try to get to that level where what I've mentioned, putting in homework time that this class is supposed to have for yourself throughout the week definitely will assist you and help you. And you're able to, if you accurately work according to what your strengths are, that amount of time is sufficient for you to come and have a good understanding of that which has been taught. My teacher used to say that if you have a nail and
Hello?
I think we lost him.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it. He'll come back.
Sorry about that. My internet cut off for a second. Can you guys hear me and see me? Were you guys able to hear me and see me previously as well?
Mm,
Yeah or no?
For a few minutes you were out, but it's everything is okay now.
Okay, okay. Mhm. So as I was saying, did you guys get the example of the nail, by the way, that I was mentioning? Or was it out for that?
We're out.
Oh, okay. So I said my teacher used to say, in terms of methodologies of working, he said, if you were to put a nail like this to the wall and start to hammer, right, it will take a very long time. The nail will never go into the wall because it's not perpendicular to the wall, right? You'll damage the nail and you'll damage the wall. But if you just hold the nail perpendicular to the wall and you hammer, it'll take very few attempts and the nail will go through the wall. This analogy was used to explain that the method by which we choose to learn is extremely important. We have to figure out which method works for us and our person. What are we fine-tuned for? And if we practice different methods, slowly we'll recognize our own strengths. This is extremely important. By which method can we memorize and understand these different lessons that we're going through the best? So now we're coming to lesson number 9. Lesson number 9 is linked to one of the previous lessons that we have. Remember Mudare Majzum, where the Mudare would get a jazm on top of it. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So in that, I told you that there are many words which basically can come on top of um, two verbs, right? And subsequently make both of those verbs majzum. In was one of them that they mentioned. And I told you there's lots and lots of them, ma, mehma, and so on and so forth. There are multiple majzum verbs that are there. I read off a list to you as well. Today we're looking at some of those. We're looking at some of those words which are basically conditional words. They're huruf al-shart. There a condition is being posed, and this condition makes majzoom the verb which comes after it, which is the shart verb, as well as the jawab al-shart. Okay, so the responsive verb. So they make two verbs into majzoom. So this lesson, lesson number 9, is actually one instance of mudari majzoom. So in the instance where basically conditional words were touched upon in that lesson by means of in, right? This lesson comes and expands on that and shows to you and tells you that wait a minute, there's way more than in. In has a lot of sisters, and in fact, they all act in a very similar way. So if we look at it, if we look at these practice words, you can see man is one of the words that is what? It's a conditional word. It's a harf shart. So if it comes upon, what does it do to the verb that comes right after it? If you guys see, what verb, if man was not there, this word that is right after man, ya'mal, what would have it, what was the original form of this particular verb?
Yeah, Malu.
Ahsant. So what happened then when man came? What is man exactly? Man is a harf shart, right? It's making a condition. Man ya'mal. So the one who does amal, the one who does ya'mal, right? What does it do? What is the action that this man causes in that fail that is coming afterwards? It
Majzoom.
it makes it majzoom. Okay. Man ya'mal su'a yujza bihi. Right? Yujza, what's happened to yujza?
Accusative.
Yeah.
المنسوب.
Why is it mansub? Why would you say it's mansub?
It's an object.
Um, uh, uh, why would you say that the verb here is majzum? So the verb yujza is to have the recompense thereof. Man ya'mal su'a yujza bihi. What's making you think that it's majzum?
It's mansub, right? The yursa.
What's making you think it's mansub? The fatah on top of the za?
Fatah, yeah.
Okay. Man ya'mal su'a yujza bihi. What's special about yujza?
Yursa is mudara, like it's mudara.
Okay, it is mudare, but look at the ya. What's on top of the ya?
Oh, Dhamma.
The dhamma here. Remember in mudare, the normal form, did the ya have a dhamma on it or a fatha on it? The normal form.
No, it's fatha, yaf'al, for example.
So if the normal form, if this was if this was yajza, right? Then you'd be like, okay, yeah, yajza, it seems like it's a mansub. But over here, the ya turned into a dhamma. What's going on?
Ah. Mm. Is it I could be completely wrong. Is it a command?
So this is not a command. When you have commands, the ya drops.
Mm.
So a hamza might come for a command, or a lam with a kasra might come. It would be liyuj, liyujza, مثلا. But there wouldn't be a either a li would come or um, a hamza would come, as we studied in the previous sessions when we were looking at amr, that in some cases a li comes, in other conjugations a hamza comes, or perhaps in certain cases like khud, it doesn't become akhud, it just becomes khud. Sama'an, in the way the Arabs used to pronounce it, they didn't bring a hamza in. That's the third case for some words, an exceptional case. So over here, neither of those things are happening. So it's not a amr, it's not a command per se.
Is
So
it something hidden?
no, there's
Remember,
nothing hidden.
oh, there's nothing hidden. Okay, okay.
There's nothing hidden here. So the Arabic is very tricky in the sense that sometimes it's the there's something hidden or not. There's nothing hidden here. Some of you guys posted questions to me on WhatsApp, and both of the examples you guys were struggling with, there was something hidden going on. So that made sense why you were struggling with that example, which is very good that you asked that. For the rest of you guys, if you want to try that example, it's verse 33, sorry, it's verse 71, Surah 33. Let's see what's going on there and try to figure out what is hidden, where is it hidden, basically. It's a good challenge for you guys. So I'm going to leave this one to you to see your notes previously and see if you've covered this or not, and you have, and see, at least I've explained and talked about this particular thing before, and see if you can figure this out, okay? At the start of next session, inshallah, when we go through it, I'll bring this example up and we'll go through it. And I'll ask you guys first if you guys were able to figure it out, right? And if not, then I'll answer it then. Is that fair?
Sure.
Don't spend a lot of time on it because you have other homework to do as well. For example, reviewing the notes and the examples from this particular chapter, the other examples that I haven't brought here, right? Going through them and making sure you understand what's happening in those examples. If any one of those examples you're not able to figure out what's going on, that's a good indication to message me and say, hey, this example I got stuck in. What's happening to the second example here? أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت. What's the حرف الشرط here?
أينما.
أحسنت أحسنت أحسنت. Let's go to the previous slide. Look at these words right here. We covered man in one of the example, whoever or who, and now we have أينما, wherever, right? So next slide. So أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت. So what's happening? أينما came and did what? What is happening to تكونوا?
It lost the noon.
أحسنت أحسنت. So it lost the noon. So before أينما came, it had the noon with it, and now أينما has come and it's lost the noon. Okay? أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت. What's happening with يدرككم?
Sorry, if I may go back to takunu, it lost the noon. Does that mean it's also majzoom because it has the sukun on the alif?
No, so remember, remember we said that when one of the ways that Majzoom displayed itself was that on the lam of the fi'l, right? It would come about, there would come about a sukoon. Or in some cases, what would happen was that the a noon would be taken away, except for two cases where the noon was not an alamat of raf, where it was an alamat of the feminine nature. So that would be conjugation number 6 and 12 in the charts that we displayed, basically. So plural form, feminine in both mukhatib and ghaib, in both the person you're speaking to and the third person, second person and third person. Okay. So أينما تكونوا, the going away of the noon itself is the quote unquote sukoon here, right? That sukoon on the alif, it's for beautification in the written sense. تكونوا. So أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت. And what is it saying? Wherever you are, death will find you. Question. This verse, it's using the word أينما. When we're typically talking about death, do we say wherever or do we say whenever? Should we say whenever? Like death comes at a time in our life, or does it come with a place association? Typically, we think of it as associated with what?
Time, right?
Right?
Time.
Typically, you associate with time. So you can say whenever you may be, death might approach you, meaning that you could be 2 years old or 20 years old or 200 years old. Death isn't shy of that. It could come to you at 2 or 20 or 200, whenever you may be, death might come to you. That's one way of saying things. But over here, your attention is being brought to a specific aspect of death. It's not just the time, but rather also the place where you might be. Why do you think this is important?
I don't know. It's maybe to show that you can't escape it. There's no place where you can be where death will not reach you on earth.
Surah Hashr, the first verse of it, and the second verse of it, the second verse talks about something very important, and the first verse as well. It talks about the people coming and creating for themselves their castles and thinking their castles will save them from Allah. Okay? But then Allah puts a fear in their hearts, right? And they break the castle in their house by their own hands. Sometimes we create for ourselves a pseudo safe environment, and we have claims such as now the not even God can sink this. For example, when they created the Titanic, one of the things that they said was not even God can sink this. And whenever you challenge God, then you have what happens. So over here, uh, this is identifying for us one aspect of human nature that we have in our nature some places where we feel a little bit more protected and safe. Let's say, wait a second, no matter where you go, don't worry, huh? This thing can come and follow you, right? Well, as kids, you'll notice that, for example, when they might be scared that some sort of monster is in the room, they'll just cover their head with a blanket, and now they feel safe underneath that blanket, as if like if there was a monster that they can't penetrate that blanket, for example. It's very natural in us that we associate safety with places, and our natural drive to be safe from death is fitri. It's very much in tune with our nature, right? And sometimes we might get into a place where shaitan coerces us into thinking that we're now safe from death. When that happens, we no longer have death as a means of managing our actions. Meaning, if we know that death can approach us, right, that's a great way of managing our actions to ensure that what we're doing is important. It isn't wasteful. It isn't something that is taking away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So over here, this verse is actually indicating to us, showing to us that wherever you are, death will find you, right? Meaning it's not shy of any places. There's no blanket you can cover your head with. This is something that this is a transition between this dunya to the next that will occur, right? What does that mean? Means that if death was meant as a means of motivation for us now to make sure that our actions are in line with the best of deaths, the capacity to go from this dunya to the next one in a pleasing manner, such that we're actually going towards uh, the good rewards that we've sent forth by our actions, right? Then that remembrance of death becomes a motivation towards doing good, being aware of our actions and so on and so forth, right? And that death can occur anywhere. There's no place that you can hide yourself from death. Let's look it down here. What's the third example I brought? أينما تكونوا يأتي بكم الله جميعا. What is the حرف الشرط here?
أينما.
And I brought this one because I want to show you that look, أينما is written in different ways in our text as well. If you notice over here between the noon and the meme, it was connected, correct? But if you look over here down here, is it connected?
No.
No. So in different types of prints, you'll find both types of manners too. In different places, you'll find Ainama written this way, or you might find it written this way.
The
Okay.
translation is a bit different between the first أينما and the second أينما. Like they added the so. Is there more emphasis or
Um,
a
um,
difference?
when you get to this idea of writing it with a fasl, writing with without a fasl, you could perhaps sometimes associate some meaning with it, right? Especially if there's something missing.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I think wherever you are is very similar to wheresoever you are. It's not a huge difference in the translation. What I'm talking about is something like, for example, when in Surah Maryam, when Hazrat Jibreel comes to Hazrat Maryam and he does tamathala laha, he manifests himself in front of her, rajulan sawiya, in the shape of a man, right? She says, Lam aku baghiya. The actual word is akun, right? So she brings a lam on, the Quran brings a lam on top of akun, right? So it should have been lam aku, right? With a wow. But over there, even the wow goes away, it becomes lam aku. Okay. In another different place, Hazrat Zakaria, when he's saying that basically, oh Allah, I'm ishta'ala ra'si shayba, like I've become an old person and I still haven't talked badly about me not having a son yet, right? Over there, um, a similar akun, lam akun is used, but over there the wow is brought. So according to our Mufassirin, Hazrat Maryam is when she takes the wow even away, it just becomes lam aku. That shows the significance of emphasis in the sense that she says, even in my wildest dream, I had not thought of committing baghiya, going against my Rabb, right? Going against that which my Rabb wants from me. Right? Shows the intensity of how strongly she felt about going against her Rabb. Okay? So lam aku as opposed to lam aku or lam akun. Anybody? Somebody had their hand up.
Yeah, can I ask you a question? So aina ma takunu, what is that ma doing there?
So aynama is one word. Right?
Oh, I see aina ma. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I tried to show you that. Look, like if you over here, aynama was written this way, and I didn't want you to be confused. And sometimes it's written like this, aynama. You see this?
Yeah.
That's why I brought these two examples. So you can see that there's different textual writings that are happening as well. Aina ma takunu. You can also, there is a possibility of saying that aina means where, and ma comes and it's basically a word that is tarkib. It's made up of two components and so on and so forth, and you can have a whole bath on that. That's higher level than this class. We won't get into that. We should, the level of this class I want you to understand is aina ma is seen as one word, right? It's a harf shart. It has some effects that follows it, right? And we should be able to see that there's multiple ways in which it comes in our text. Sometimes like this, and other times like this. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
The next point that I want to cover today is, let me see how much time. Okay. Should hurry up a little bit. When we have certain conditional words like iza, man, la'in, in, and they're followed by a past tense verb, the meaning of it is taken to the present tense. So a very famous verse is this one right here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إذا أراد شيئا. Allah talking about himself really. He's saying that when he intends a thing, إذا أراد شيئا. If you notice over here, إذا came on top of the word arada. Arada, is it mudari or is it mazi?
الماضي أراد.
Ahsant. So it comes on a past tense verb, but in terms of the meaning, look at the translation. When he intends, not when he intended a thing. You see the change in meaning?
Mm.
Do you guys see the change? So if no change of tense was happening and إذا did not do any change of tense, then إذا أراد should have translated as when he intended a thing in the past, right? But the point of this particular point in your lesson number 9 is that when إذا comes on top of a madi, arada, right? the overall meaning gets taken from the past to the present. So now it's not when he intended, it's now when he intends a thing. You see the difference?
Yes.
Okay. إذا أراد شيئا, when he intends a thing, أن يقول. Why is يقول fatha on the يقول? What's happening with يقول? You guys should be able to tell me this now. The original should be يقول. We've
Yeah,
studied in the past.
because an is a subjunctive controller, so it changes the yakulu to the yakula.
Ahsant. Very good. The an is causing an action here. Separate from this unit, we covered in a different unit, but we can recognize it here right now. That's very good. We should be able to recognize these things as we see it. So an yaqula is taking place, not an yaqulu, because an is causing an action. It's making this verb mansub. An yaqula lahu, right? He says to the thing, kun, be, fayakun, and it becomes. Okay.
So I have a quick question. Ida
Go ahead.
is a conditional word, and we
Yes.
said the conditional word is usually majzoom, but arada is mansoob.
Yes. So over here, typically it's supposed to be a conditional word is supposed to come and it's supposed to make things majzoom.
Yeah. So is it just because it's a verb that because it's a present tense? Because now we're counting it as a present tense?
Overall, now is going towards the present tense. The meaning of it is going towards the present tense, not the word of it. إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. So this arada right over here, it's just showing to you that the tense has now changed. Okay, so we don't have madi, which is majzoom. Why? Because madi were always mabni. You guys remember madi in the mazi? We didn't have this talk of majzoom, mansub, and so on and so forth. You guys remember that? In your lessons so far, the idea of majzoom, mansub, this idea of i'rab only occurs in which tense?
Um,
The mudari and amr, right?
Present tense, yeah.
Okay, so it only occurs, it only displays itself in the mudari, and then sometimes when the lam and li is presented on the mudari, it turns into an amr, for example, right? But at no place do we talk about this in the madi. Why? Because the madi are all mabni. Okay? There's an extensive bahas here, an extensive discourse here, as why do we have this talk in mudari? And they say, well, mudari is very similar to an ism in some cases. And because of its similarity, it takes on another aspect of the ism, which is that it can take on an i'rab. Okay? So this is a little bit higher level in this course, but it's okay. We can understand this point that madi are all mabni. They don't change their i'rab. Okay? But mudari, right? An amil can come on a mudari and now change its i'rab for you. So إذا أراد, the meaning goes to the present now. And you can see the arada is an arada. Whether إذا comes or an comes or nothing comes, arada stays as arada. Okay? So ضرب, for example, it's not the case that if إذا was brought in from a ضرب, it changes to ضرب. No, can't. Right? Or for example, if something else was brought before it, it changes to, ضربا. No, ضربا itself has a fatha on the ba, right? And in its rough state, it's like that. It's a mabni. In its nas state, it's like that, right? And so on and so forth. Doesn't, so it states, even if the language requires it to have a state, let's say, if that was assumed, right? Its appearance stays the same. Madi are like that.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Okay. This feedback from you guys saying that, yeah, I understand and stuff really helped me. Otherwise, I'll keep explaining because I don't know if I've explained enough of it or not. This is one of the deficiencies of an online classroom where I can't read faces. So, إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. We have a hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. It's a very beautiful hadith. You see this fa over here? Fa, kun, fa, yakun. Imam Ali says, I am the fa on kun fayakun. In the sense that when Allah intends something, right, by means of the wali of Allah, that thing takes place. Okay? So, إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن, and hadith goes, I'm the fa on yakun. Okay? In the sense that when Allah intends something, and now it is to be, I am the one who brings it about. So we have that in history where Imam Ali was given the titles of Yadullah, the hand of Allah, right? Where if Allah intended something to happen, a battle to be won, something to happen, right? He was the means by which Allah carried that out. We're close to 13th Rajab, it's passed already, but I thought to share this point with you guys, inshallah, for your benefit. Let's look at the next example. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ. What's happening here? Man has been brought on top of what? Ittaqa or attaqa. What does it do? فَمَنِ
So
اتَّقَى.
this is past taka,
Yeah.
past. So it's at its base form, like in the past. It stays with the taka with the. Sorry, it would be mansub.
No, so in this, remember these words all make it majzoom. They all create a majzoom effect. They're all amil jazm. But over here, فَمَنِ اتَّقَى, when it comes on taqa is mabni, it stays the way it is, doesn't change in its appearance sense. The فَمَنِ اتَّقَى, the meaning of it gets taken to the present tense. Those who are righteous, not those who were righteous. Okay? In terms of meaning, this is what's happening. The point of this lesson right here is for you guys to take this idea that when you look at the Holy Quran, and you see a harf shart like إذا, man, la'in, and in. When you see these types of words, right? One of these four words come before a past tense verb, right? Right away in your mind, know that the meaning has been taken to the present tense. Okay? So right away know that that which you're talking about is not in the past. The meaning of it has been taken to the present sense. This is the practice that you need to be doing. So there's other examples present. You need to look at those and see if you can figure out and identify exactly what the past meaning would have been and how these words, when they've come, they've now changed the meaning and taken them to the present tense. Okay. This point, there is a huge detailed talk on when the fa comes. There are some places where the coming of the fa is wajib, some places it's jaiz, and so on and so forth. Okay, but that is for a higher level of Arabic. At this level, we need to just understand that sometimes in the answer to the condition, a fa occurs. So sometimes when you see a fa and there was a condition there, it's a quick and good indication that this might be the response to that shart. Okay? So if you were to look at this verse, the first one, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, فَإِذَا طَمِعْتُمْ فَانْتَشِرُوا. Right? Which fa is it talking about? The first one or the second one? Which one is our shahid mithal? Which one is the one we're talking about right here? The fa that comes on the answer to the condition.
فانتشروا, the second one.
أحسنت فانتشروا. So what's the حرف الشرط here?
It's إذا.
أحسنت, it's إذا. So إذا came on top of تمعتم. And what did it do to تمعتم?
So it did مجزوم.
It made it مجزوم, but how did it make it مجزوم? تمعتم is مضارع or ماضي?
ماضي. طمعتم. Yeah.
It's ماضي. أحسنت. So
ماضي.
now, so what did it do to the meaning?
So to the present tense.
أحسنت. When you have eaten. You see that?
Mhm. Yes.
And then to show that response, it's the a fa comes. You see that fa is right there? So
Mhm.
this fa is
Yes.
showing that it's coming on top of the response verb. فانتشروا. Okay, so this is a good practice of the past point as well as this point, that sometimes إذا comes on a past tense and changes the meaning from the past tense to the present. The mahal of that would be holding some form of an i'rab, majzoom perhaps, right, in this case. And the fa then shows us that, look, the response to that particular harf shart, it's right here. فانتشروا. Let's look at the next one. فأما الذين آمنوا فيعملون أنه الحق. What's happening here?
أما is the conditional.
Mhm.
الذين آمنوا. فا is the فيعملون, the fa and فيعملون is the answer to the response to the condition.
Ascent, yes, it is. Perfect. So, question. Why is that noon still there?
Because it doesn't need beautification.
No, it's not the reason. What is يعملون?
It's the third.
They know.
Yeah. Present.
They
Sorry?
believe. They believe. Yeah,
They,
Maluna. They
It's
female, male, plural.
Uh,
So it's plural.
it's
It is first person, second person, third person. What is it?
it's third
Third-
person masculine plural.
Ah,
Yeah,
third,
Maluna.
third person, masculine, plural. Okay. So over here we see that in the Jawab al-Shart, in the written text, the يعملون has a fatha on it. Okay. It's not, in fact, majzoom. So remember I told you there's a whole bahas of what does the fa do when the fa comes on, when is it wajib, when is it jaiz, and so on and so forth. There's an extensive bahas on the fa, that where is it compulsory for it to come, where is it recommended for it to come, what happens when it comes, right? It has some effects that it causes and so on and so forth. So understand that there's a lot more going on with the fa than this lesson is telling us. Okay? Just understand that. But in the higher levels, we can go through, inshallah, we'll go through some of the different explanations of what happens with the fa. Actually, what I will do is in this week, I'll write out some instances. So I won't write the whole passage out, but for your, just to give you a brief introduction, I'll write out a little blurb about the fa in English, and I'll send it to you on the WhatsApp group. Okay, but that will kind of it's not a mandatory homework to understand that or go through it. It's just that those of you who might be curious about what's going on, what happens with the fa and so on and so forth, it'll be a good glance at what might be coming in higher levels of Arabic for you guys. Is that fair? Are you guys okay with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Low is something very important. Low is used for a conditional sentence in the past tense. Okay. We also have multiple types of low. One of them is low imtina'i. Low imtinaiya means a low, which basically is saying that you know that you like you know when something like the milk is spilled now and so on and so forth, you say, had you been careful, the milk would not have spilled. Meaning what? Mean the person was not careful. With this low in this situation, this had you in this situation, right? You're showing that that you're actually negating what the low is saying in the apparent sense. Had you been careful means you weren't careful, right? So that those types of low are called low imtina'iyya. That's a good thing to know, and those occur a lot in the Holy Quran, right? So when you read low, look at the meaning and try to see if it's the lower imtina'i or not. Why is that important? Because it shows to you what trait people were missing and what causes, what effect really missing that trait had, right? So for example, in the case that I just told you right now, had you been careful, milk wouldn't have spilled. I'm showing to you that there's a direct link between carefulness and the milk spilling, right? So if in your own life now you don't want milk to spill, you need to make sure that you have the trait of being careful. That's one example. It's not from the verses of the Quran, it's just an example I made up, right? But I'm trying to show it to you because this is one of the ways where you can actually seek true guidance from the Holy Quran. See where it uses low, right? Low imtina'iyya, right? And what characteristics does it bring about? And what are the effects? Right? And say, oh, if I want to stay away from this effect, milk spilling in our example, then what trait is it that I need to embody? Always, that's guidance for you, right? So this is an important point I wanted to mention here in terms of low. I try to add beneficial meaning points as well as we're going through the courses because I think the whole point of learning Arabic is to interact with the meaning of the Holy Quran. So if there's extra caveats of meanings that I can share with you guys, I try to do that wherever possible. So the answer of low may be introduced by the attached lam and fatah on the verb to stress the nature of the sentence. Okay. So in this case, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. If your Lord had wished, he would have made men one ummah. Okay. So this is in a very similar manner a low imtina'i, meaning he did not wish. Okay. What does that mean? What is the difference between ummat and qawm?
Qawm is community, right?
What about ummah? People.
Is it a nation?
Nation. Okay.
Is qawm a part of an ummah? So there are many qawms in an ummah?
Could be, yeah. It could be that you could be from different qawms, but you're part of one ummah. So, for example, we could be from the qawm of, let's say, um, um, the Arabs, the qawm of the Persians, the qawm of the Pakistanis, but we're part of one ummah. Okay. The example I just gave shows you a little bit about the meaning of these two words. A qawm is something that is a construct-based thing. So just because me and you came and we put some borders up and said we call this country Pizza Land, right? It's a construct. We made it up. It's nothing real, right? Not like an apple. We made the boundaries like this today. Tomorrow we could make the boundaries a different way. And now we called it Pizza Land, for example, or let's say Canada or Iraq or Iran or wherever, right? So that which comes out of these constructive divisions is something that is constructive in nature. Ummah is talking about a division based on faith, based on understanding and beliefs. Those are real now. Those aren't constructive. Okay? It's something that unifies the people. So as I said, we could be Persian, Iraqi, Irani, Canadian, or you could be part of one ummah. We're one ummah of the Holy Prophet, right? An ummah is based off of faith and understanding. What's Allah saying here? Think, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ, if your Lord wished to, He could have made you all Muslims, and He could have made you all part of one faith, one way of believing. Okay? Meaning what?
He didn't create you as a
The
single
difference that
Allah.
I said the difference that exists in our in the humans that exist on this planet, where they have different beliefs and so on and so forth. This is important. This, by definition, is a means for the believers to transcend, to go higher. How we interact with others is extremely important. If we interact with them in a way that's not deserving of Islam, then now that difference between me and them has caused me to go further down. Okay? If I interact with them in a way that is deserving of Islam and me being a Muslim, then all of a sudden that interaction is a source and means of me elevating towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This difference itself is a rope by which I climb towards Him. Okay? So, so once we ponder on the meaning a little bit, we can pull some meaning out of this low imtina'iyya, as I mentioned to you. Okay. This difference is intended because Allah's overall goal is to make mankind reach Him, get closer to Him. Therefore, the intention of this should be somehow linked to guidance as well. So if I interact with those individuals who differ from me in the right way, the way Allah instructs me to interact with them, then that's the source of me getting closer to Allah. If I interact with them in a way that is against how Allah wants me to interact with them, and that difference is a source of me getting further away from Allah. But now this is now a rope by which I can climb towards Him or fall in the pitfalls of hellfire. So this difference itself is a measure of a test, really. We get that understanding slowly as we start to think about the verse and how it's been presented here.
Sorry, I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Because we have conditional walau, but sha'a is in the past.
Yes.
But then
So
I
we
look at
said
the
about
translation. and it says, if your Lord had wished. So here
yes.
it stays past and it didn't change the meaning to
Yes,
present.
yes. So it's not part of those 4 words that changes the meaning. Remember the words that I showed you? Let's go to the previous slide. These 4 words, right?
Oh,
They change the meaning. Low is not one of them. Okay?
okay. So,
Next. Okay. So in low, when low comes on top of sha'a, you're right. Look, the meaning is if your Lord had wished. Right? Stays in the past. If I was to tell you by looking at this, which one is the response to the condition? Which one?
la ja'ala.
Laja'ala.
Mm.
Okay. So the response to the condition of Allah's wishing, لو شاء ربك, is لجعل. La introduces the response coming up. Very good. Okay. Next point is about how are we doing for time? Oh, are we done? Anybody there? How are we doing?
It's 8:30.
8:30.
Sorry, 9:30.
9:30. Oh, so
9:30.
we're done in terms of time. Okay. Let me try to cover this a little bit and perhaps cover one more slide with you guys, and then we'll end the session, inshallah. If I can, okay, are you guys okay if I go 1 or 2 minutes over?
That's fine.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we started about a minute late, so let's take a minute this way. So, illa, which has been discussed earlier, generally means except, right? So, illa is like a clause to say, the people came except for their donkey, or people came except for Hassan. So illa is a means of showing except. Like basically you're saying you're giving a rule to the total and you're taking one thing out. You're creating an exception. So everybody came except for the donkey. Everybody came except for Hassan. Everybody came except for this person, right? And the example of the donkey and Hassan in this case are two different examples. That was a hint towards different types of exceptions. One time, because when I say everybody came, well, a donkey is not part of everybody, right? But Hassan is part of everybody. Sometimes I take an exception which is part of that everybody, and sometimes which is like obviously part of the everybody, because when I say everybody, I mean humans, right? And then sometimes I take an exception now which is part of that. Sometimes I take an exception now which is not part of that. So these are two different types of exceptions, and you'll cover those later too, inshallah. So, but in other cases, illa is written like this, but in fact, it's actually in and Allah. That's two very different things. Illa as an except, and when it's actually in and Allah written together, it's unless or if not. Right? How do you know that? How do you know which one is it? Well, you look at the effect of it. For example, in this case, وَإِلَّا تَغْفِرْ, if this was an exception, تَغْفِرْ would be what? It wouldn't change. First of all, it wouldn't be تَغْفِرْ because a verb, al-illa, the exception, wouldn't come on a verb. Because you can't be like, okay, everybody came except for running. That doesn't make sense, right? So illa, one thing is to understand the meaning of what's going on. The second way is to see what? We look at the effect. In and la are there. That's why the taghfir became majzoom. You guys see that?
Yes.
So two words written very similarly in our text, right? Two very different actions, two very different places where they come, two very different meanings associated with them. Okay, so that ends session number 9, lesson number 9 for us. Please go through the examples of lesson number 9. Inshallah, next session, I will try to cover lesson number 10 in a more quicker manner, and we'll continue, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Any questions? Please ask now. Allah.
Oh, thank you, Ma'jur.
Okay. Sorry, today's session was a little
Thank
bit more extensive, but there were some points and some meanings I really thought were important for you guys to take away. Hopefully, you guys benefit from that as much as I did.
Thank you very
Inshallah,
much.
next week. And yes, there was a proof that we could have one extended weekend, an extended Wednesday, sorry, added to the end, and then that will cover up the missed class that we had, inshallah. Fi aman Allah.
في أمان الله.
Thank you.
you.